their bot lane for later in the second half.
That makes me think they have some sort of trick up their sleeve, because I agree with you. You could have grabbed the Aatrox right there. You knew it was a Gangplank, so you'd be safe taking that matchup. But instead, they prioritized the Gragas, which works so well with pop-off solo laners, things like Renekton and such.
Fnatic being on the red side do, of course, have that final counter pick. Alongside that, Splyce have locked in what we assume will be their top laner in the form of the Gangplank. So Fnatic have the options to try and find counters in both lanes. Swain is something we've seen from Bwipo down in the bottom lane previously and in the top, and was recently buffed as well. I've heard rumors of him coming back into the meta. We'll see if that today is the day.
Well, right now it is just a hover. Nothing has been locked in just yet. We are looking for a little bit more AD damage. Ooh. And we're going to see a return of the Urgot from the side of Fnatic. This is quite interesting. We haven't seen the champion for quite a while. I can't recall of any recent buffs that did come through for the side of Urgot, but he was nerfed out of the meta after the World Championship, where he was very prevalent and one of Bwipo's go-to picks.
Yeah, and so now I'm just curious if it's a comfort pick for Bwipo, if there is going to be something special that we see on the Urgot. We'll keep our eyes on it, see if maybe we need to update our Urgot knowledge and how he fits in this meta. But I agree with you, Vedius. It's been a long time since we've seen this guy.
Definitely has. Kobbe locking in the Tristana for himself here. It's a traditional pick for him, gives you a lot of aggression in the bottom lane, and I want to see it teamed up with a support that can have an impact early on. Things like the Alistar, like the Thresh, could be very good here for Norskeren.
You know what? You got your wish. The all-in potential level 2 between a Tristana and Alistar is there, and it was the easy left open option there since Nautilus was banned earlier, which is a good go-to into Rakan. So it was either Alistar or the likes of Leona.
We'll see where Fnatic decide to go last pick here. It's going to be towards the mid lane. They will lock in the Cassiopeia, so they round out their composition with Nemesis on the Snake in the mid lane.
So we're looking at this draft from Fnatic right now, pretty much focused around scaling. They have a couple of options to play around the bot side of the map, but Kaisa versus Tristana, I do feel like it can be a little difficult to get prio in the early levels, but maybe with a Rakan, Rekkles and Hylissang can look to be a little aggressive. We'll have to see whether or not they look to give their jungle a pull. Meanwhile, on the top side of the map, you would imagine that the Urgot would have the push up against the likes of a Gangplank, which means that I think Fnatic should look to play around the top side of the map relatively early, but even then, their comp seems to me, when you have a Kaisa and you have a Cassio, very much towards the scaling end of things, and I don't think they need to try and force any plays that hard in the early game.
Also, with Cassio and Kaisa, you have excellent Monster Shred.
You do?
If you ever get open access to an early Baron, and especially if there's early mountains, which we definitely need to keep track of, Fnatic could easily turn this into a monster objective-oriented game.
Such an important game for both these teams. Fnatic need to win out to guarantee themselves that second spot and a rematch with G2 over in Athens. We'll see how Splyce can stand in their way today, because of course if Splyce win here, they will have the 2-0 in the head-to-head. They would lock second place, and they would be the team going straight through to our live finals. It's going to be an exciting one to be sure. Last time it was a barnstorm over game. Today, I'm sure we'll see it again. On to Summoner's Rift we go for what Xerxe called the best match of the split. Fnatic versus Splyce. It was last playoffs that Fnatic demolished Splyce in a 3-1 defeat. Earlier this split, Splyce were the victors in a very back-and-forth skirmish-heavy game. We'll see what they brought to the table today.
It was a messy game the last time they played Medic. That was when that was Hylissang's probably worst performance of the split, I feel. Him and Broxah had a really poor game, and Splyce did a great job of punishing it, but it was very back and forth. Both teams could have won it, but in the end, it was Splyce that ended up having the better late-game team fighting. And when we look at this comp, they do have scaling elements themselves, and I feel like that looking at this game, we're kind of going a little bit old school, because we're not going to be seeing a lot of early aggression. We're not going to be seeing a lot of like focus on early kills or priority. It's just going to be about scaling, getting to the mid game, and probably a lot of team fighting.
And it feels like a lot more of Fnatic's composition, while I agree with you, there's early game potential to play around the Urgot, is Rekkles is kind of like your last line of defense, your insurance policy here. You have a Cassiopeia, and then he's using a Kaisa in tandem with a Rakan and a Gragas who work beautifully in terms of synergizing with Kaisa's ultimate. So it feels like kind of a right turn from Fnatic that suddenly now we're back to playing towards Rekkles as a power point.
It definitely is a little bit of a 90-degree turn from them. I do wonder about that early game discussion, because you say both the comps don't really want to do too much in the early game, but so often we've seen Xerxe and Broxah be those early game catalysts for their teams. They're the ones that set their teams up to get into the mid game ahead. And this game, I wonder how they're going to look around jungle pathing, what lanes they'll be looking towards.
Well, it looks like both junglers right now going for the safer, clear approach where they do one side of their entire jungle. But as I say, that Broxah already looking for a potential play around the top side of the map. We did talk about in Draft Out, he may look to play around the Urgot, but with a ward spotted out, he's not going to go for it.
And it could also just be that he thinks that he can get the double buff.
Bwipo can win this!
Hey, just solo kills him. Bwipo with the 1 versus 1. There's the early power of the Urgot. Even after all those nerfs back on patch 9.7, he's still able to find a 1v1 kill.
And again, meanwhile, while this is happening, is that they got the early vision down on Xerxe's pathing. Like Vedius is saying, he went for the complete clear, so he's cleared all of his camp's bottom. Broxah has slipped in underneath and taken away the blue buff.
And of course, Broxah, he has priority topside, so he knows he's perfectly safe to do this. Vizicsacsi will be forced to TP back in. Of course, Vizicsacsi did not use his flash there, but Broxah is very aware of what is going on, and he should be able to slip out undetected.
Could look for a potential gank.
Could go for it. Chachi does still have his flash in the top lane, so maybe respecting the fact that Xerxe was pathing up towards the top side. Bwipo unable to go back yet, so still just sitting on that Doran shield, but as the wave pushes into him, expect to clear most of this out and probably have a sizable lead.
Dive, dive.
Yep.
Dive, dive, dive.
No flash.
Submarine call coming in. Now Broxah is in the right place at the right time as Xerxe and Chachi look for the dive on towards Bwipo. Broxah will match up against his enemy man and force Xerxe away, and the dive has been dissuaded for the moment. But meanwhile in the bottom lane, Norskoren's flashing in. Hylissang caught out, he's done! Kobbe jumps forward, the power of Alistar Tristana coming up trumps.
And now Splyce answer back with a 2v2 kill of their own down in the bottom lane. They punish Hylissang, and we'll get a replay of exactly how, but he ends up losing his flash, and Kobbe and Norskeren find the advantage.
And it's the read knowing that Broxah was busy topside protecting Bwipo because the top wave crash was coming in. If Bwipo's denied the CS there, it hurts so much, so he has to call his jungler to babysit him to allow him to pick up that necessary golden experience.
So we're going to have a look at it now. Hylissang trying to zone the duo away. He gets a good knocker, but then he gets CC'd in by Norskeren. He's forced to flash out because he realizes that he's far too up the river, and he ends up dying. So good punish there from the side of Splyce.
Very greedy play there from Hylissang as well. Jumping in, knowing the Alistar has the pulverize means you're going to be locked up. And it meant that Splyce were able to get their first kill of the game. Putting those resources into Kobbe, who we said is likely to be one of the key carries for this team.
Now there seems to be a play here from Xerxe as he's actually running towards Broxah's blue buff. Now they do have priority over mid and bottom. Kobbe also has TP. And it was a question of if Splyce were actually going to pull the trigger on that. And Xerxe says, no, I am going to get 3 buffed, and instead heads to his Crud camp.
Humanoid now making the rotation down. They do have vision on Broxah, who's only level 3, so he's likely going to be forced back. You can see that he is sitting on the Predator boots now. Chosen not to use them just yet, and will just force out the smite in order to secure that one.
Splyce in a position right there. Their Rekkles hasn't taken his back yet. He still has access to the TP, and there's a huge item discrepancy. He's now going to match it up, but Splyce have set themselves up into a possible gank to try to use that TP.
It should be pretty easy for him to catch out Hylissang. Hylissang will be looking to dodge away. Oh, great play there by Hylissang. Uses the W first to make sure he can get to Rekkles without getting knocked up.
So Splyce once again try to attack the bot lane. We said that there wasn't going to be a huge amount of early game action, and boy, were we wrong. Bwipo was able to find the 1v1 kill. We've seen a bunch of ganks now towards the bot side of the map, and rightly so, attack where there aren't no summoner spells. Splyce, they don't really want to try and look for a play top, because trying to kill Bwipo could be dangerous, especially as he gets closer and closer to that level 6 mark. But the big thing I want to draw viewers' attention to is the fact that Nemesis just used his teleport, which means right now Humanoid has that TP advantage. Going back to base, he won't be able to pick up the package, but if he holds onto that TP, it gives him the ability to save it for a later play, either towards the bot side or the top side of the map. And this gives Splyce more global pressure overall.
And I just want to echo it. The TP has been used now, but we're still looking at that package timer. So we expect the top lane to be ignored outside of maybe the easiest gank in your life, or to wait until those level 6s for both the GP and the Sejuani, and again start funneling towards that bot lane on Rekkles and Hilly.
Fnatic with river control here might look for the gank down towards bottom side. Kobbe and Norskeren being very respectful. No wave for them there yet.
There's that ward. Thank you, observers, for pointing that one out. They saw Nemesis making the roam down, and so the bot lane was very aware. The missing pings were coming out in the river. Xerxe was resetting, so they were forced to disengage. Good trade coming out from Nemesis in the mid lane, though.
About half HP on both of the mid laners. Nemesis picked himself up a tier first here on the Cassiopeia. Just going to try and scale up. Hex Drinker first on Humanoid, as expected, in towards an AP matchup. But here comes a Hex Smash and Norskeren. Oh, not quite there in time. Hylissang quick on that trigger finger.
Norskeren is doing a wonderful job, though, using Fog of War and trying to abuse with this Hex Flash every time. Over the wall, that time around in the brush leading up to River. They've now managed to get Xerxe in here into a control ward.
Straight onto the ward. Hylissang should just back away from the bottom side of this. Rekkles will catch the wave as it pushes in towards his tower. I want to give some credit to Xerxe, who's been able to keep himself pretty even in that top lane after losing that first kill. He's gone back, got himself a Sheen, building up towards the Trinity Force, as expected on the Gangplank. But I do really want to see how much Bwipo can do on this Urgot pick, because it's such a surprise to see it after it fell out of meta for so long.
Well, to be fair, he's already doing a lot. He sits at about a 500 gold advantage right now, even though the farm looks close. Securing that first blood definitely benefited him, and now Broxah is in the wings. Vizicsacsi does have the flash up, and Broxah is just going to use this time to clear out the vision. Now the question is, what does Xerxe do with his time? Because he should hit level 6 relatively soon. The flash is still down for Hylissang. Does he look for a potential collapse on Hylissang in the rotation?
That's what he's going to do. Norskeren coming in from the side as well as Hylissang will just jump across the wall. Pretty easy for him to escape.
Yeah, the only unfortunate thing for Splyce here is that their game plan centers so much around the bottom side, but it's a Cloud Dragon and so much river control from Fnatic's vision. But that's been the major speed bump here, is this feels like a relatively quiet early game outside of those initial scuffles.
You can see that Fnatic have actually done a great job of controlling mid and top, even though they ended up losing out in the 2 versus 2 due to a bit of a misplay from Hylissang. Nemesis has done a great job of keeping the mid wave constantly pushed up, and of course, because Bwipo found that earlier kill, he's in a pretty comfortable state as well. And as a result of just having that pressure, it's given Broxah a lot of freedom to move in the river, both top and bot. But fortunately for them, they have been able to, for Splyce, they've been able to reclaim some vision bots, so now they can go for this counter gank that Broxah's trying to set up.
This is a really dangerous play for Fnatic, however, because you're not playing with cross-map advantage. Not only does Xerxe have his ultimate about to come off of cooldown, but he also has the TP.
Yep.
So Fnatic should maybe pump the brakes here a little bit before really diving in on bot lane when Splyce have a potential numbers advantage.
I think they had the same read as you there, Frost, because Broxah backed away as soon as he saw Xerxe in his crosshairs. It's only the Cloud Dragon early on, and that means we probably won't see Splyce being able to get as much of an advantage out of the bot lane pressure that they have. Do you want to bring attention to some of the CS numbers? 11 farm lead for Nemesis in mid, and actually quite a sizable sum for the Kaisa down towards bottom lane. Maybe on death doesn't hit there as Xerxe flashes away, continuing to try and trade with Bwipo, but Bwipo knows if he can get that all in, he can force Xerxe away. Now Xerxe's fading because Xerxe's on his way. Bwipo looking for the flash forward. Xerxe there. Glacial Prism hits and Bwipo caught unawares. He's going to try and get away with a disdain, but Xerxe is on the chase. Cannon Barrage comes down and Bwipo will die. Parlay to the base and Xerxe gets his first kill.
The sword versus the shield. Meanwhile, Fnatic now know that they have the numbers on the bottom side since Xerxe is top, and more importantly, Xerxe used his ultimate. So that GP ultimate is no longer a dissuader, it's just the teleport and the package from Corki.
Ooh, now, along with that kill, Xerxe's using this opportunity to make a play towards the Rift Herald as Norskeren takes a lot of damage in the 2 versus 2. You can see both spots getting chunked out. But Kobbe and Norskeren have to be careful because Nemesis and Broxah are in the river. Splyce have full knowledge that this is going on, so the risk of a dive is very real as Fnatic stack up a wave. So they're going to be forced to play more so on the back foot. And here it comes.
Are they defensive enough? Predator Boots coming in. The ward will spot him out. Norskeren trying to get away from this. Has the flash. So does Kobbe. And Splyce will be incredibly respectful. Package coming down from Humanoid as he tries to rotate towards his bottom lane. But as soon as Nemesis and Broxah left, he realizes he can just take his time to clear out this ward.
Fnatic have done a really good job shifting also Bwipo into the mid lane to pick up the farm. Now he's been sitting on the TP the entire time. He's forced to use it. Now this is going to sound a little bit weird, but I feel like obviously Bwipo didn't want to die in that exchange up into the top lane, but I feel like what he was trying to do was actually just get the Gangplank ultimate. If he can trade his ult for GP ultimate or force Xerxe to use it to clear a wave or just panic ult, that's actually a huge win for Bwipo because he's like, I want to isolate this into the 1v1 topside matchup instead of giving Splyce tools to use it cross map. So anytime he gets that ult in the lane, that's a huge win for Fnatic.
And on the one hand, I agree with you. I think that makes sense. But on the other hand, I
He
remember
also
that...
misplayed.
No, I also think that Bwipo is a hyper aggressive carry top laner that just loves to fight. So on the one hand, you can be like, yeah, that's a really intelligent play. On the other hand, I'm like, maybe Bwipo just likes murdering people. Like, when he's on this Urgot, he loves to get in your face and try to go for these trades. And now he's got Broxah here as well. No flash on Vizicsacsi.
He's got Hilly too.
He's playing on the defense. I say that as Vizicsacsi oversteps so slightly.
Broxah doesn't land the body slam, but here comes Hylissang. The charm will connect into the purge. It's easy enough stuff for Fnatic. They get their second kill on the board.
It was just a ping pong game right there. It didn't matter how much fancy footwork Chachi had, didn't have access to the flash, and just gets denied.
So look at all the plates that Splyce are picking up right now. They're going to secure 3 down towards the bot side of the map. They've now dropped the Rift Herald mid as well, so they're going to secure at least another 2. That are going to go in the back pockets of Humanoid. So while Fnatic do commit that play up top, they only get 2 plates in exchange for 4. And they can even threaten a dive towards the bot tower and maybe even secure this before Fnatic can answer. So yes, Fnatic do find a kill, but the overall gains heavily go in the favor of Splyce.
Huge game for Splyce as the Cannon Barrage was used to clear out that top minion wave, meaning that Bwipo didn't have as much time with the tower as he would have liked. Now, Kobbe will wait for the next wave. I'd like to see Norskeren just staying around, trying to threaten Rekkles a little bit to make sure they get that tower first.
And look at what Vizicsacsi's doing. He moves to the mid lane because he recognizes that the entire top jungle does not belong to Splyce. He is grouping up because he knows that the risk of death is extremely high and he wants to offer value elsewhere on the map. So now they have 2 mid, 2 bot, they secure the tower, and they may be even able to get a couple plates in the mid lane as well.
But now as we shift out of this lane phase into an open map state, you have to wonder, was this worth it for Fnatic? The fact that they put so many resources into getting Bwipo so strong onto this top side, when you have the likes of a Gangplank, a Corki, and a Tristana, the Tristana and the Corki in particular, that ate up a lot of that time, whereas Fnatic goes top, they get everything else on the map, and it feels like Splyce are in a much more dominant position at this point in the game.
And if our observers could so kindly swap over to the gold, you'll see the influence that those plates do have. In the mid lane, there's now a 500 gold advantage. In the bot lane, there's 1,300. So even though the gold is even across the 2 teams, because of what Bwipo is doing, both the mid laner and the bot laner for Splyce are in a fantastic position.
And it means that if Fnatic are able to leverage the strength that they funneled into Bwipo, then it's worth it.
Yes.
If not, then Splyce will start to snowball ahead.
Bwipo has completed his first item, the Death's Dance on that. Got Infinity Edge complete on Kobbe on the other side. Those are the 2 key carries we're looking at the moment. Hylissang was trying to catch out Chachi with a little bit of a sneaky Fnatic push, but Chachi very much aware that that could happen and will force Hylissang away. Now, there's an Infernal Drake up in a minute's time, and as the clock ticks towards that 15-minute mark, I think both teams will be content with how the early game's gone, but perhaps wouldn't have wanted to give up the little bits of leads they've given to the opposing laners.
I mean, the important thing to note is that entering into the mid game, the debate is who is stronger right now. Because whoever is stronger and whoever finds it easier to gain push and thus priority over Drakes will be the one that gets to dictate the pace of the game over the next few minutes. Right now, to me, it feels like it's Splyce. But the biggest question is, just as Frosk was saying, how do Fnatic utilize Bwipo? He has no teleport available. It will not be up in time for the Drake spawning, which means that I hope to see him base and now group up with his team. Fnatic could look to try and force a fight right now as a means to regain some gold back into their mid and AD cannons.
Yeah, and I like the fact that both Nemesis and Rekkles have access to those teleports, so quickly grab as much gold as you can. If you need to make a reset because you're close to the item, they have the ability to cheat the priority, reset themselves on the map very quickly. But you can see that Fnatic, they feel that if Bwipo's here, they are strong enough to contest this Infernal, but I think Splyce have the same thing in mind. This could be a big fight.
Again, observers, thank you for highlighting that ward that sits just behind, on top of the blue buff right now. Splyce have the ability to flank. The question is, will they look to use it? Humanoid has the package. Fnatic start the Drake.
Splyce maybe a little bit too late on this one as the Inferno Drake is going to fall straight away. Miasma forces Xerxe away, and Splyce will try and get that mid lane prio and maybe look for the tower. Norskeren going in, just acting as a distraction. There's the Glacial Prism. Bwipo frozen in place for the moment. Now the package on the bottom side of this fight. Humanoid could change it all in a heartbeat.
Splyce do not want to fight this now. A lot of their crowd control is gone. They just want to focus on securing the mid tower. If they overcommit, Fnatic will come back, and this is the smart choice. Just take the objective, walk away, and just be happy with a little bit more control over the map.
So Infernal for mid lane, we talked about how Fnatic's composition has such great monster objective control because it is a Kaisa and a Cassiopeia. If they ever get to these monster objectives first, Splyce learned a hard lesson. It immediately disappears. They didn't get there in time, and Fnatic did get something for this trade.
Still very much even between the two of them, but as you say, Fnatic starting to rack up those Dragons, an Infernal and a Cloud underneath their belts, and I'm just incredibly happy to see both these teams kind of reverting to a playstyle that we knew them both so well for in the past. Fnatic were always the team fighting gods. Rekkles on Sivir is what I remember. 500 CS win condition. Splyce, the more methodical, slow team that waits for the 30, 35-minute mark and then just explodes in those full 5v5s. I'm expecting huge team fights, and I wonder how much these teams are going to be able to use the lead that they have so far.
Well, right now you're starting to exploit maybe some of that greenness here. Humanoid being picked on. He is curious, he suspects it because he's checking that brush, but he is definitely testing his luck on this tower.
He's going to defend it for the moment. Hylissang trying to jump away. Nemesis and Broxah are there to help him out, but look at the damage already on Hylissang. So squishy. He's going towards the Athene's Unholy Grail build here with the Fiendish Codex, and makes it very hard for that Rakan to survive if he gets caught out.
So one thing I want viewers to keep in the back of their minds as we transition more into the mid-game is what Hylissang is doing on the map. What I think Fnatic have done a lot of this split, and something I think they've been pretty good at, is how they attack side lanes, specifically the Bwipo Hylissang duo. Early on in the split, we saw that Shen Rakan combo, and it's just something that, while not utilizing the Shen, they've actually leveraged a lot throughout the split. And it's just a way in which Fnatic create a numbers advantage in a side lane to allow Bwipo to gain more control, and then he creates windows to then join the rest of his team. And it's like an ebb and flow. Hylissang helps top, top then helps the rest of the team. And this trade-off has benefited Fnatic a lot throughout the course of this split.
Which is why I love what Splyce have done to try to answer that by having access to high mobility champions that have a lot of pressure over the map, like Gangplank and Corki, so that if Fnatic do start blitzing out into these side lanes, there is windows that Splyce can do to attack elsewhere.
All right, 2 minutes before the Baron spawns, it's Splyce who are trying to get vision control over the area, giving Xerxe and Humanoid a little bit of safety to push up for this tower. And if Bwipo did overstep, he could be quite easily caught by the Splyce 5-man squad.
Now we are seeing something which is quite a distinct difference between the two teams, in that Fnatic love to play on all three lanes because they like to get as much gold funneled into all of their carries as possible, whereas Splyce will sacrifice Xerxe to group up with the rest of his team, and often they play as a 4 or 5-man unit. And we saw a great example of it there, where 4 members in mid, even though they had teleport on Humanoid and Xerxe, they sent neither of them bot lane because they would much rather stay as a group because they know their 5v5 is stronger, so they can leverage that power as with man advantage to try and force down these objectives, which does work. But the problem is if you keep forcing it and it doesn't result in anything big, then Fnatic end up with the bigger payoff because all of their carries are getting more gold over time.
So the big objective you have to look at has to be that Baron in a minute's time. The Cloud Drake up in a minute and a half, as well as Splyce will not want to give that one up, but it's only a Cloud Dragon. It's not the most impactful of Drakes in this game.
Splyce need to be careful clearing out all of the vision. They haven't spent a lot of time over this side of the map, and you can see Fnatic have it littered everywhere with wards. So first step first is Splyce need to take control over the bottom side of the map, but this is actually buying time for Bwipo on towards the top side. So slowly, Fnatic are starting to pull Splyce around this map. All the easy objectives are gone, possibly a pick.
Not quite able to connect fully onto Broxah. Xerxe didn't want to use the Glacial Prison. I want to bring a little bit of attention to some of the items that have just been finished. Seraph's Embrace complete on the Cassiopeia alongside the Leandries. Looking at the other side, we've got Trinity Force on Gangplank and on the Corki, and those 2 items, Infinity Edge Rapid Fire Cannon, complete on the main carry for Splyce, Kobbe.
So we can see that Splyce feel pretty confident with a lot of their item spikes actually being hit. Level 11s coming through for pretty much everyone, so they're feeling confident. Kobbe actually has a bit of a level advantage over Rekkles as well, and it can be seen pretty distinctly in the gold difference too, with a 1.6k advantage sitting in Kobbe's back pocket. So one of the big main mans, one of the players that Shox was keeping her eyes on, Kobbe, is performing extremely well, and how these two perform in the upcoming team fights will be pivotal in determining the outcome of this game.
Oh, Xerxe.
Flashes away, Broxah unable to land the flash chase. Barrow dodged away there. Xerxe just trying to fight versus 3 players from Fnatic. Cannon Barrage coming down, the rest of Splyce unable to help him, and Fnatic find a pick.
And Vedius talked about how Splyce will often pull Xerxe to group with the team, but when they do that, he's often left exposed, and you will constantly see Xerxe getting picked off, and that's the reason for it. He's picked off there. It's now a numbers advantage in this mid lane, with only Humanoid getting something up on the top side.
Fnatic finding a good pick there, catching Vizicsacsi in transition and not getting punished for it. Unfortunately for Humanoid, he was lying in wait, deciding whether he should TP in, base, or group with his team. That small element of indecision means that he cannot trade this tier 2. Unfortunately, though, he does disengage in time to get out with his life.
But Fnatic gets so much from that. Cloud Dragon mid lane tower means they can step deeper into the Splyce jungle, set down some of that deep vision that we always talk about when you're looking to set up towards Nash.
It also means that they've now shored up a lot of these item disadvantages on the likes of their AD carries. So we take another look at that. Chachi had already burned the flash. There's nowhere he's going to go, so at this point he's just trying to do as much damage knowing that the end is coming.
And the important thing to note there is that this was one of those instances where Fnatic actually brought their side laners to group as 5. And by having a numbers advantage, it made it easier for them to try and force the play and end up putting Vizicsacsi in this awkward situation where he ends up losing his life.
And a few minutes ago, we talked about coming into the mid game, who we thought was the more powerful team, who was stronger, as Nemesis looks for the fight down towards the bottom lane. Humanoid called out with a Vivi on death, will use the package into the Valkyrie. Nemesis could flash chase here, Humanoid still slowed up. Flash in Miasma dodged away by Humanoid. Hylissang on his way though, there's the quickness. Humanoid should not be able to dodge away from this. Charmed up, another kill goes to Fnatic.
It is 3 members down here that managed to pick up Humanoid, but meanwhile Splyce have committed all of their numbers towards the top side. Chachi taking the tower for his mid laner's death.
And you can see how Splyce are not just giving away single members for nothing elsewhere. This is the top end of Europe. These are 2 of our best teams, and every time someone loses their life, it's exchanged for something else. So the question is, was this worth it for Splyce? And I feel that because you lost your summoner spell in the flash on Humanoid, in exchange for the flash on Nemesis, along with getting the tower top, I feel overall Splyce can be pretty happy with that trade.
And I think coming into this game, a lot of the debate was around who the expected winner was. Most people said Fnatic should be the comfortable favorites, and Splyce are the team that I expected to have to try and challenge and step up a gear to actually take down Fnatic. We'll see if Splyce can continue this pace, because now it feels like Fnatic are starting to fight back.
Very quickly, we did notice that Bwipo going full secret agent as he gets the back in the brush without getting spotted. But yeah, you're right, Medic. What really surprised me was how many fans thought that Fnatic were head and shoulders above Splyce. And I suppose you can guess by the crowd that there is a bit of Fnatic favoritism amongst the European community, but I feel that this split, Splyce have demonstrated that they can compete with the likes of the best, and that this should be a very close matchup. And what we're seeing so far is still very close. The gold is very even, but some of these big item spikes are coming through, and how we see both these teams play over the next few minutes will be an indicator of how they stack up against the likes of their opposition, along with G2 in the future.
I particularly want to keep track of Humanoid's flash. Without him having access to the flash, it is much more dangerous to play out to the side lanes like he was, even though he does have access to the TP. And it also means that Broxah can cause that much more havoc with a well-placed ultimate here, because it's just now the Valkyrie to save Humanoid, and he is a massive part of this team's damage.
So again, we're seeing it once more from Vizicsacsi. See how he still has his teleport, but is grouping up with the team. They're not sending him up top lane to catch the wave. There's nothing for him to do bot, so they're just playing as the 5 versus 5. Splyce could be looking for a fight right now. They have a lot of engage with both the Sejuani and the Alistar, but Fnatic have the better setup, especially with Humanoid up in the top lane.
They also have the superior flank because Hilly was able to blitz into this jungle, clear out, know that he's not standing on a ward by using the sweeper, and just doing classic Hilly things.
And it comes all the way back to draft. We mentioned it. As soon as that Rakan got locked in, we said that's snuck through the draft there from Splyce. Hylissang being on his signature pick will make it very difficult when they get towards these team fights, and you can see Hylissang's played pretty well so far this game, a couple of mistakes in lane, but this is where he really thrives on the Rakan.
But every time that they pull Chachi to cover this mid lane, he's losing time where he could be farming into a side lane, and that's also Splyce losing so much of the vision. When they reset onto this map, they had control wards all over this Baron. It's now been completely deleted, and Fnatic are on the objective.
We talked about the Shred. The Cassiopeia can do so much damage to that Baron. It was already below half. Here comes the engage. Norskeren going in. Broxah already done, and Humanoid coming in for the bit more of the fight. Nemesis stunned up for the second. Teleport coming in from Chachi, and now it's going to be an all-right brawl in the river. Hylissang down, a double for Humanoid. Bwipo trying to help out his mid laner, but he is caught out. Jumps straight in onto Kobbe. Here comes Rekkles. It's a triple for Humanoid. But how now is Kobbe fallen? Rekkles doing so much work. It's Bwipo and Rekkles against Splyce, and Fnatic are coming out on top. Chachi running for the hills. Bwipo standing in his way, chasing him down. There's no escape today. A triple for Bwipo.
And it ends up being a 5-for-4, just barely in favor of Fnatic. We talked about how these team fights would be explosive, but that was not what I was expecting. So it's Fnatic that start off this Baron in this Alienware replay, but they get collapsed on by the engage from Norskeren and Humanoid. Note how Humanoid is staying just outside of the range of the Cassio, so he can slowly chunk them down. And with the flank from Vizicsacsi, you think this fight is over for Splyce, but then Bwipo joins the fray.
And it's the fact that Splyce have used so many vital cooldowns before they joined the fight, full team for Fnatic. But now we're back on the Baron, we're back in the play.
Teleport in from Kobbe, all 5 members of Fnatic here. Norskeren and Kobbe have to try and defend.
Deep teleports.
4,000 HP left on it. TP's coming in, Humanoid there. But Fnatic have already got the Baron, and now Splyce have to try and act as cleanup duty. Norskaren's going to lock up Bwipo. They're going to try and take down the Urgot, but he's been so tanky. Eventually he'll fall. The rest of Fnatic run back to their base. 4 Barons still alive.
Yeah, and the fact that they got the Barons, they can still play into multiple lanes right there. So Fnatic got what they came for.
Props to Fnatic for just going straight for the Baron. They knew that 2 members had the teleport, and I think that Bwipo doesn't even reset. Because Broxah was the first one to die, he knows that he can already get back out onto the map a full 19 seconds before Xerxe can. And even though the death times are even for Xerxe against Rekkles and Nemesis, again, those double teleports that were available meant that they could join the Baron well before the rest of Splyce could. Great awareness from the side of Fnatic to know that they could rush this Baron down and secure it before Splyce had an effective answer.
And Bwipo in particular, he said during that call out, you know, if you leave Aatrox, I'll lock it in. He had the opportunity. He instead gave priority to his jungler, but is making up for it on one of his signature picks with this Urgot. We thought, why is this coming out? Now sitting 5-2 and 3. He got the first blood, he tanked for the Baron, and he is leading the charge for Fnatic.
We asked the question, will Fnatic's investment in Bwipo pay off? It is paying off dividends right now. He is dominating on this Urgot pick. The rest of the map looking very good as 3 items finished on the Kaisa, 3 items complete with the Rapidons for Nemesis. And on the other side, you're sitting at 2.5, maybe 3 on Kobbe.
But what is important to remember is how close that fight actually was. It was 5-4. If one member had used the skill shot differently, dodged something, flashed at a different time, that could have been a Splyce team fight win. And that's why it's important to remember that even though Fnatic have the Baron right now, you can see how Splyce, as a 4-man unit, are just pushing up and saying, we'll still fight you. We'll still go toe-to-toe. We have the stronger front line. We have a Tristana. His QSS is now completed. Splyce still feel very confident in their ability to team fight, and the gold gap is not so big that they're out of it just yet.
And it's not just about the gold gap, it's again, the gap between Splyce and Fnatic isn't that big. This is heavy favorite towards Fnatic. If you ask anyone, Fnatic will be the first name out of your mouths, but Splyce are putting up a very admirable fight.
Standing in the faces of Fnatic, trying to defy them at every opportunity. And here they just continue to keep those waves pushing out. A minute left on the Baron buff hasn't really got Fnatic too much. And scaling coming in for both teams now. Chachi building towards it. The Sterak's gauge has finished that up. Is just that little bit more tanky in those 1v1s against Bwipo.
So this is damage control right now for Splyce. They need to absorb as much time as possible on this Baron and stop bleeding objectives, and they've done that very well by moving around as a grouped up unit to protect their flanks and pick up some farm.
It's giving Nemesis a little bit of free time down towards the bottom lane. It's something you talked about earlier, Vedius. Fnatic playing 3 lanes while Splyce are sometimes playing 2. I think we saw that in effect right here as Nemesis was down towards that bottom lane, got another tower for Fnatic. With it, they have about 1,500 gold lead coming into the 30-minute mark. But as the game goes on, that minuscule goal advantage matters less and less.
So now I'm thinking next steps for both these teams. Splyce, they really want that fight. But the setup is what's most important. And I think that the question is, who do you want to die first? Because I look at this comp from the side of Fnatic, I'm like, if you leave Nemesis alive, well, he's just going to melt through your front line faster than you can survive it. But Rekkles can dive onto the back line so flawlessly that if you waste all of your engage trying to collapse onto this Cassio, then Rekkles is just going to have a field day on your back line.
I think one of the big issues that we have in terms of teamfight execution is that Xerxe isn't at super tank status yet on this Sejuani. As soon as he is, I actually think that Splyce get a bigger advantage in terms of range because it's Tristana and Corki. But until Xerxe has that key itemization, this can still go either way.
Bwipo went a little bit brave there, disdaining in, trying to catch out Humanoid, and Xerxe was waiting around the corner with the Glacial Prism. Bwipo had to burn his flash, and now Fnatic pushing in for the tower. Baron buff has fallen off, but they'll get the turret without too much question as Chachi is down towards bottom lane without a teleport.
Because ultimately, when you look at these compositions, there's multiple damage threats for both sides. Say you get Nemesis. Well, Rekkles and Bwipo are still going to do massive damage. Yep. Say you get Humanoid. Kobbe is super fed, and you also have to deal with a Gangplank. So this is going to come down to picture-perfect execution. And again, I'm looking at key tank itemization to be the difference maker here.
What does surprise me is the lack of magic resistance coming out from the side of Splyce right now. Remember that there is so much AP damage coming out from the side of Fnatic, but at the same time, if you then fully itemize towards MR, Bwipo is just going to obliterate you. And we've already seen how much damage he's doing in this game. So it's definitely a difficult comp to itemize against. I was worried that Fnatic wouldn't actually have enough AD damage, but clearly investing in Bwipo and getting him ahead early has paid off.
I think a question that comes down in these teamfights is the engage-disengage war as well. You're looking at Hylissang and Broxah to be primary engage tools for Fnatic, and the question becomes, can Splyce disengage then re-engage the fight on their terms? Can they front to back it if they need to? And if they can Fnatic then try and re-engage after Splyce being able to disengage the first foray?
I kind of feel like it's who gets the first shot off, who gets that first sucker punch. Is it Hilly who finds the miraculous engagement, or is it Xerxe with the Sejuani ultimate that finds a key member? Because there's both options for these teams that, you know, once the initial CC goes down, once you have that big, massive wombo combo moment, that Kobbe can start Kobbe stopping around on the Tristana, or Rekkles can fly in underneath onto the Kaisa and clean up fights.
What I think, Medic, is that with the Infernal spawning in 10 seconds, and the Baron spawning in 20 seconds, those will be the objectives where both these teams fight. The setup will be important, the amount of vision control they have. Notice again, Vizicsacsi abandons the bot wave to get with his team faster. They want to make sure they have all 5 members. Ooh, Splyce get forced into that choke point. Very dangerous situation for them.
Flash burn from Xerxe. Fnatic going to start up the Infernal, and Splyce say, okay, we'll go up towards the top side, maybe get control over the Baron, maybe even start it ourselves.
They're just getting bullied out, like he said. Getting funneled into that choke point means they lost the vision war over that Infernal, and it just wasn't worth it. Broxah was getting a perfect flank onto Splyce, so Splyce decided to cut their losses and now head towards the Baron.
Oh, this is dangerous.
Splyce trying to pull Fnatic into a fight. Norskeren looking for the flank position. He's on the blast cone, but he's going to get all the way back around to the back of his team. Hylissang stepping forward, takes a lot of chunk as Humanoid catches him out. It's actually Xerxe who's backing away, but he rejoins the fray.
We're coming down to that point in the game that it is going to be one moment, one clutch play. Time and time again, we know that Fnatic members can do it, but can Splyce stay up with them? Fnatic have their bread and butter in situations like this. Splyce, where is your bravery now?
Splyce is split up, Nemesis coming in to join it. Look at the bottom side of the fight. Rekkles almost takes down Humanoid well in the end. Cannon Barrage won't save you now. Hylissang in with the charm as Xerxe goes down towards the bottom of the fight, but Norskeren's caught out Rekkles. He goes golden for the second. Hylissang almost falls as Kobbe opens up the big guns. Broxah flashing in, knocks him back, but Rekkles is down, and Kobbe's still alive. Nemesis joining the fight as 2 go down. Fnatic, though, Bwipo gets another 2 shutdowns to him, and it's only Xerxe and Kobbe left alive.
And it all came down to that single moment. Rekkles finds the pick onto Humanoid, and that is the go signal to kick off the fight for Fnatic. They now make their way towards the Baron. They start off the objective, but Splyce still have the jungler and Kobbe alive.
Kobbe looking for that one shot onto Hylissang, almost takes him out. Nemesis there, shredding through the Baron, and they decide against it. Fnatic get it. Second Baron of the game, 4,000 gold lead. And next up on the menu is the Elder Dragon in 3 minutes' time.
And that is the difference. It is single moments. It is single players making single plays that change the course of the game. The fact that it was Rekkles that found the kill, he zoned Humanoid out of this fight and managed to take down the Corki.
And Humanoid should have been able to see him because that ward saw Rekkles coming around that way. But he did not respect the fact that the collapse would just immediately come in from Rekkles, and he would find that 1 versus 1 kill. With so much damage suddenly disappearing from the side of Splyce, it ends up being an easy pickup from the side of Fnatic, and then they just clean up the other members on the side of Splyce. Beautifully played by Fnatic.
Doesn't matter if you kill Rekkles, Bwipo and Nemesis are there to follow up. Look at the damage from the solo laners there from Fnatic. Nowhere near matched by Splyce, and now it's Splyce's time to try and find a 6th gear, because Fnatic have upped the tempo of the game. They put their foot on the accelerator, and they are looking for that spot in Athens.
And to kind of look at this whole game in its entirety, one of the big things that we discussed coming into today was... Oh yeah, okay, it's just Kaisa's TP, was early game versus mid game versus late game, right? And one of the big things was...
Oh, Rekkles! Oh, almost takes down Humanoid there.
Oh.
Tanks up the tower, but the tower will now fall, and now Fnatic continue on the offensive, pushing forward. Xerxe, Norskeren, and Xerxe on the flank position, but Humanoid had to go back to the base, and now with the cannon wave coming in, Fnatic looking to open up the base of Splyce. Trying to break through that inhibitor line, but they can't do it yet. Xerxe still on the flank position, going in. Humanoid's here. Oh, it's Hylissang who gets caught out. They'll stun lock him, and they'll take him out before the fight even starts. And now Humanoid is coming in from the side, and Splyce Splyce may have found their moment. Splyce may have found their man, but Bwipo stands stalwart in the way. The GA popped, and they'll look to take him out. Kobbe jumps in, takes out Broxah. Bwipo's gonna fall as well. TP coming in, it's Nemesis joining the fight, but Splyce might look for it. Nemesis maybe TP'd into his demise. Kobbe's gonna open up.
Oh, Nemesis!
Nemesis steps up once again, goes golden. Rekkles here to help out his mid lane, and Norskeren with the stun lock. Kobbe gets another, but Rekkles will answer it. 4 for 4 as Rekkles continues in his AD carry versus AD carry, and Kobbe is feeling himself, but Rekkles says, not today!
And Fnatic walk away with another ace. 5 for 4. Once again, the Baron buff is still alive, but it is not on Rekkles. It does not matter. He should secure an inhibitor. The game will likely not be over, but what a team fight between the two teams. Splyce had the optimal setup. Splyce had the perfect opportunity to come back into the game, but the individual playmaking from Fnatic turned it around.
And it's Fnatic who also get the last laugh. They say, champion puddle, we can play anything. They pull out a different composition. They put Rekkles back on the Kaisa, give him some teeth, and he shows up big with a healthy assist from Nemesis.
Look at how long Nemesis survives as well. Clutch use of the Seraphs, along with the GA just buying time. Nemesis goes back to base, he then TPs back in, and I thought at this point, it's over. Kobbe has too much damage, he's still very healthy, but he actually walks away from the fight, and he's not here to support. Then Nemesis just dives in. Great sidestep to dodge out from the Xerxe knockup, and then without Kobbe there to assist, he's not able to find that kill. Then he finally comes up with the cleanup, and then it's the 1v1. Rekkles has his ultimate up and available, and he's able to find the outplay.
And that's the thing, this fight started with Rekkles' ultimate, and it lasts so long that he gets multiple uses out of it.
Beautiful stuff from the Fnatic franchise, man. Rekkles showing us once again he can play more than just Karma. Humanoid caught out here on the miasma. Rekkles jumping in. The Baron knocking back, and now Fnatic are just on cleanup duty. It's too easy for them. Splyce cannot find an avenue to approach, but maybe the cannon rush enough coming. Oh, he's jumped straight into all of the Fnatic team. He takes down one. He's looking for a little bit more, but Fnatic will back away, and Splyce will not find another kill out of this. Void Seeker doesn't quite hit onto Humanoid, but Fnatic are looking greedily at this Elder Dragon.
They still have so much priority over this Drake, so at the end of the day, the play still goes towards Fnatic. And Kobbe used his flash very importantly in that last skirmish, which means Splyce are at a massive disadvantage coming into this next fight with an Elder Dragon on top of it.
Props to Kobbe though. This guy is going beast mode in these late game fights, doing what he can to keep his team alive. But look, he's not in a position to support right now. A great use of the miasma locks down Humanoid long enough to bait the rest of Splyce to try and help him. And while he does get away with his life, 2 members end up falling. Quick flash and QSS coming out there from Kobbe to avoid any dire situations, and while he does find a single kill, it's not enough to clean up the rest of the fight.
And we're very quickly approaching kind of the last dance for Splyce here. Fnatic, they've gotten 2 Barons, they've gotten the Elder Dragon, they're
Rekkles
feeling very confident that they can close out this game, and Splyce have run out of time, have run out of miracles.
40 minutes or thereabouts on the clock. 7,000 gold lead for Fnatic. An Elder Dragon in their back pocket. Another Baron. Their third of the game is up in a minute's time if they deem to take it. Full builds across the board. It comes down to this.
We're ending up in a much longer game than usual because both comps are actually very similar in terms of their execution. Both are much more towards the scaling, but also the early game went favorably for the bot side of the map for Splyce, favorably for Fnatic's top side, so no one had a clear advantage. The gold was so even for so long that it made it difficult for both these teams to force anything. They needed the Baron, and every single time it has been these neutral objectives that has decided the games, and every single time it has been Fnatic that has come out on top.
One of the key things in terms of execution is that Splyce at this point have great long range. The Corki, the Tristana, they are fully online. So if it is a front-to-back composition, they should be able to hit you first. That said, Fnatic have wonderful tools to start fights with the long-range engage potential of Hilly and the Gragas barrel.
Bwipo going in, catches out Xerxe. Here comes Hylissang straight onto the back line. The 2-man charm. Kobbe and Humanoid still alive. Broxah jumping in, gets the knockback, but the first to fall is a Fnatic member, and one will answer from Splyce. Bwipo gets the double. Rekkles jumping in, he gets another. Kobbe into that charge, he's still alive, but 4 members strong Fnatic are going to look to push and win.
And Fnatic, utilizing the power of the Elder Drake, end up just making mincemeat of Splyce. There are only 2 members left, but one of them is Kobbe. Is he strong enough to hold the line for Splyce?
Rekkles is not with the rest of Fnatic right now. He's looking for that top lane in here, maybe just opening up the map a little bit more so they can go back towards the Baron. Xerxe and Kobbe have to have a hero's stand here to hold it for Splyce. You can see how much that birth into Athens means for both these teams. Of course, if Splyce won this game, they would go straight to Athens. Fnatic need to win out the rest of their split. They have to beat Rogue tomorrow to secure their spot in second place.
Just the eldest members of Splyce there left to clean up their base. Their base is in tatters. Fnatic going to clean up another free Baron. That's the third on the clock for them. And it feels like the nail in the coffin for Splyce.
Definitely does, but it's felt like that for the last 10 minutes or so, and still Splyce winning out parts of these fights. It just seems whenever you knock one Fnatic player down, another one steps up in their stead, and you can see Bwipo here very eager to step forward.
Just look at how tanky Bwipo is. He soaks up so much of the damage before the rest of Fnatic even join the fray, and he's done so much work as well. He doesn't even lose any of his HP bar. The man just so beefy on the Urgot. We thought that this champion was out of the meta. He brings it back in week 9. 10-3-8 is the scoreline, and a lot of this game started with Bwipo, and it has largely ended with the thanks of Nemesis and Rekkles. Let's see if Splyce can do anything to turn this one around. We keep our eyes on Kobbe every single time. He is the man that could turn it around. Late game Tristana, they find the ult.
Xerxe going in, but it's only Bwipo they've caught. He's still got a GA. He jumps forward, can't quite land on Corki. Tumble coming in here from Rekkles as he tries to join the fight. Chachi's not there. It's a 4v5 now as Rekkles is here for the fray. Kobbe's still opening up, but Bwipo's already got one kill. Chachi's now going to TP in, but he's on the back of the fight, and Fnatic have already won. The GA not even popped by Bwipo.
Yeah, because Bwipo's got his TP. He's going to come back in, and Kobbe put everything into him, and now Rekkles
putting everything in to taking out Kobbe. He stands up. He's counted. Fnatic take 3. Splyce can do nothing about it, and Fnatic are looking for that Nexus.
And it came down to the big moments, to the clutch plays, and it was Rekkles, it was Bwipo, it was Nemesis, time and time again. That is the difference maker between Splyce and Fnatic.
Fight as you might, Splyce. You cannot stand up against the 7-time champions. Fnatic sweep you aside. They do not care about your playoff hopes. They take you out, and Fnatic set their sights on G2.
Honestly, a great game between second and third. Incredibly close. The team fights were nail-biters. If it didn't come down to a couple of clutch performances, that game could have gone either way. But it was Fnatic that came out on top, and Bwipo was the big star for me. He picked up the Urgot. They had something special prepared. He finds a solo kill onto Vizicsacsi. He plays the early game extremely well. They end up utilizing him very effectively. And he was a large part of why Fnatic were able to come out ahead in so many of these team fights.
And again, Fnatic get the last laugh. People think that they can only play 5 champions, and Fnatic fans should rejoice. You just got an excellent look at this team heading into playoffs. They have diversified, they are ready, they are powerful, they have the momentum behind them. This is the Fnatic versus G2 that people want to see.
I'm sure lots of people will be looking at Rekkles and rejoicing as well after karma, Garen last week as well. Seeing him pop off on an AD carry is heartening to say the least. Splyce, on the other hand, of course, will be disappointed. They can still get that second spot if Fnatic lose tomorrow and they beat Misfits, but now it is out of their control.
It was such a great game to watch. I love seeing how close both of these teams were, and I also hope that in the eyes of the fans, it also shifts the perspective of this Splyce team a little bit and showcases what they are capable of. Yes, they did falter to that of Fnatic, but they were able to go toe-to-toe multiple times. Those team fights were extremely close, and in a best-of-5 series, you could see very easily how Splyce could make this a 5-game one.
Oh, it was 100 HP here or there in some of the fights. 5-for-4 trades. If you guys want to get involved in just rejoicing at how good that game was, you can vote for Kia Player of the Game at lolesports on Twitter. Bwipo, Nemesis, and Rekkles are your choices. Honestly, they all had incredible moments. That Nemesis Cassio teleport, where he takes out 2 and basically wins the fight for his team at the end, was insane.
It's also the fact that Rekkles was standing in Fog of War, just trying to snipe out with W.
Oh, that was a fun game to watch.
Yeah, it was great. And I feel like that compared to the last time, this one wasn't riddled with mistakes. It wasn't people throwing left, right, and center. It wasn't a myriad of just people underperforming. It was what felt to me like 2 teams performing extremely well, and while there were a couple of mistakes here and there, I felt like that this was a great representation of the top teams that we have here in Europe.
I think it really exemplified the growth both teams have made across the split as well, and only makes me more excited coming into playoffs. I'm sure there's a man on our stage who is even more excited than I am. Law, take it away with Broxah.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, Broxah, for joining me. Top 2 is still on the line here. So how tense were you coming on stage today?
I was really nervous and excited coming into the game today. It's a really, really It was a really, really important game for us, because if we lose, you know, there's no chance of getting top 2 anymore, and getting top 2 is so important with the new playoff system. So I was a bit nervous, a bit excited, and you know, I could definitely feel the nerves when playing that game on stage, because it was a long and scary one.
You can chill now, everything's fine. Top 2 is still on the line. So as I was saying, things didn't go well for you last time. You collapsed in mid-game. How were things different today?
I think one of the main things that caught off guard last time we met Splyce was the Qiyana. It was our first time playing against Qiyana on stage, and Humanoid played it really, really well, and we didn't really know how to deal with it. So this time we took a bit of a different approach. We banned the Qiyana and we went and, you know, just tried to play our own game, focused on our own strategies and our own comfort zone, and it worked out pretty well.
So without the surprise Qiyana, things are good for you. Thank you for your insights. We still have so much to tell about this game, so back to you, Xerxe.
It took a while, but thank you very much, Laure, and wonderful to hear from Broxah. Very entertaining game. We're going to talk about it, and both I mean me, Ender, and Kadril from XL. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
So quite an interesting game to talk about, I would say. Let's start with picks and bans, because things weren't too crazy, Kadril, but you did have some thoughts about the Urgot coming out, something we haven't seen that much.
Yeah, I was kind of surprised because Splyce chose both their solo lanes in the 1-2-3. So naturally you want to answer the solo lanes with the strongest counter you have. But they went for the Gragas on the 3rd pick. I expected a kind of Aatrox flex. But then they got the Aatrox banned out, the Kali banned out, and obviously they had a plan for that. The Urgot coming out into GP, solo killed him level 4, it definitely worked out.
Yeah, in the video even, Bwipo said, if the Aatrox is open, of course I'm going to go for it, it's so strong. I feel like maybe this is him reacting to the whole, they don't play a lot of champions, they're one-dimensional. He's trying to remind everybody going into the best of 5s, I can play more than that.
I'm sure reminding people he can play more is better, but judging from this game, it definitely looked a really solid pick. Yeah. So I definitely think it was just the best option for this game. I think also looking at these compositions holistically, both me and Kadril were sort of in agreement that in the late game, you know, 4+ items, Splyce should outscale in theory, just based on the range of a Tristana. Even though a Cassiopeia and an Urgot Kaisa can do a ton of damage, they're much more limited in how far away they can take these trades.
Yeah, definitely. I think when it comes to team fights, you have Sejuani, Alistar, you have a really solid engage, whereas Fnatic doesn't really want to engage too deep because they don't have the range to follow up, whereas Splyce have the GP ult, they have the Alistar, the Sejuani, and then their carries have double rapid fire, so they have so much range advantage on Fnatic. So I think Fnatic played it really smart in making sure that the Sejuani Alistar couldn't really find the flanks, and that the Urgot and the Gragas always in the way, so they couldn't get the clean engage.
So let's take a look at some of those team fights in action then, because there were a lot of them and they were very interesting. And I want to start with the one around 26 minutes where it did look like around the Baron Splyce would get the upper hand, but they end up not getting it. So what happens?
Yeah, well, I think here Fnatic started Nash and they tried to turn, but obviously the turn didn't go well because they blew their flash on a bot play earlier. So Splyce definitely has an advantage when they flash in here. For me, I thought this fight was over when Cassio got hit by that Sejuani ult, but Bwipo kind of clutched it here. He got the E onto the Tristana and they could turn.
Yeah, also Kobbe tried to enter that fight way earlier using his W and then goes basically melee range when Bwipo turns around onto him. So if Kobbe stays alive and doesn't get instantly smacked there by Bwipo and Rekkles, Splyce win that fight. They probably even can maybe look into turning that into an objective, into a Baron off that play, but instead it ended up being this huge momentum shift for Fnatic.
Yeah, because if you're Splyce, as you guys say, you know, okay, we have the tools to get there in the late game if we need it. But when then a close turnaround like that happens, Kadril, and you're in that game, do you then start to despair and think, okay, we're not going to beat this Fnatic, or?
Well, the problem they had there was they had a huge window where Cassio had no summoners, right? And you have an Alistar with flash up, so you definitely wanted to force there. But after losing that fight, the sums came up. It came a lot more tricky to get the fights you needed. But I definitely think there, if Tristana or if Kobbe actually didn't position too aggressively, they would have won that fight for sure because she had the mid push, she came first. That was a really good fight for Splyce. And I think if they got Nash there, I think the game would look a lot different.
It would.
But yeah.
Yeah, it was Fnatic that got it. And you talk about positioning, and I think that's why this next replay is so interesting. Humanoid gets caught out entirely by Rekkles, which kind of seals their fate. So is he in the wrong completely? Should he have seen that coming?
I mean, ultimately they had wards. They knew the positioning of Rekkles. Now, I don't think he thought there was a possibility of Rekkles going for this play, but ultimately, like, I feel like he should have seen this coming. He should not be pathing into the jungle that he knows Fnatic have full control of.
Also, when you look at like stats and Humanoid, his performance, he has had 3 or more ISO deaths per week since week 4. And sometimes I feel like, yes, there's things like this, but he almost feels like he needs to do more, get that final bit of farm, get himself in the position to win the fight because the team needs it. Is that why he's making these mistakes?
Well, I think the problem there was they were trying to contest the vision on top side for Nash, but the problem was Corki was really split and he didn't really have a way to get there. So I think he took an aggressive route to help his team, and I think maybe that was a bit of miscommunication or something, but Rekkles kind of clutched it there. He got a really good play in there. It was a kind of, maybe Splyce had a chance there when Alistar flashed onto Rekkles, but I think Humanoid was definitely split up there. I think if they were together grouped with the Tristana and the Corki together, with the Alistar and Sejuani in the front, they can definitely play the front-to-back team fight, which is the ideal thing for their comp. But I think both of these comps come down to positioning and execution, really.
Yeah, I agree. And then if we look at the last team fight we've selected, I was really impressed by just both Rekkles aggressively playing forward as well as Nemesis, and I like to see that. Although Bwipo also had a phenomenal game, it is really also these two players that made this team fight happen.
Yeah, I mean, it starts off with a good engage here for Splyce. I think everyone thought this fight was going to be really, really good for them, fighting in this tight choke point where the Gangplank ult is doing a ton of damage. But then I think the big turning point here for Splyce is when Kobbe goes over this wall. Yes, he gets the kill on Broxah. Then, as this TP comes in, the engage from Splyce is all 1 by 1, so Nemesis just tears them apart.
Yeah, here I think when the TP comes in, you have to commit 4-man on the TP. If you're indecisive there, I think the Cassio can pick up some kills. And as you saw, well, Kobbe goes in to make the hero play here, but Rekkles has his ult up from earlier. But this is the ideal fight for Splyce, basically. They want to choke, they want to get front-to-back team fight going, and they want to make sure that they can hit the front line first.
Yeah, and Kobbe knows it. He knows he needs to make the hero play. So yeah, props for him for at least trying. But it's Rekkles who snags away that team fight, and also the Kia player of the game with 49% of the votes. Yeah, when it comes to the games I've seen of Rekkles this split, this is one I'm most excited about so far. Of course, yeah, Garen, you whatever. But like as playing an actual marksman.
No, it was really good play from him. We talk about, you know, the pick onto Humanoid, also turning it around in that last fight we just watched. This game was all about team fights, and it really did come down to, you know, how much influence you could have turning them around when it started looking bad for Fnatic.
As we close out this or these replays and this game, Kater, I'd like to hear from you what you think about both teams and their chances going into playoffs now that you've seen number 2 and 3 respectively up versus each other.
Well, I think just in terms of draft, both of them kind of drafted a late game composition. I'm not sure if that's sort of the style they're adopting or if that's just a one-off thing against Splyce or Fnatic. I think that both teams played really well. I think their team fighting execution was pretty much perfect. Like the mechanics in these fights were really, really top level. The macro was really good. I think that both teams are almost just as even. Maybe Fnatic has that 1% based on experience, because you could see that in this game. But I think both teams will be really strong in playoffs.
Oh, wonderful. So if it comes to a best of 5 again between Splyce and Fnatic, it might be very, very good.
It could go to 5 games, I would say.
All right, wonderful. Well, thank you so much for your insight. And for now, we're going to take a quick break. But after that, it is do or die for Rogue in the race for playoffs.